it comes down to two people feeling as if writing is something everyone can do. And when we work in an organization with all of these technical experts that have really diverse technical skills, I wouldn't dream of thinking that I knew how to do what they do better.
Funnel Visionaries.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Funnel Visionaries, where we talk a whole lot of realness about perfecting the customer journey. I'm your host, Konrad Sanders, and in today's episode, I'm joined by the wonderfully shrewd Melissa Catelli from the global Fortune 500 powerhouse AECOM. And in today's episode, first of all, we hatch a plan to plant microchips inside the heads of our target audience. But more importantly, we dive into Melissa's brilliant concept of thought leadership as a service. So let's dive in. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Funnel Visionaries, real talk on perfecting the customer journey. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks for joining me from all the way across the pond. How are you feeling?
Thank you. Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's a rainy day in New York.
And
but
as you would expect, it's overcast here in London too. So there you go.
Wow.
Are you ready to answer some really tough marketing questions?
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Let's do it. So before we get into like the serious stuff, we like to start with a bit of marketing silliness. So this segment we like to call Genie in a Bottle. Basically, I'd like to ask you if you could make a change to marketing or something about the marketing industry, right? If I was your marketing genie and I gave you one wish, what would that be?
My marketing genie would definitely give me unlimited budget or just a really large budget. But beside that, I wish that we had a more concrete way to measure the return on investment for thought leadership and content. I know there's a lot of tools that are in progress that are helping, and we've come a long way, but I still feel that in this particular realm of marketing, there isn't as strong of a case for ROI as we'd like to make. It's just not as clear cut as other things. And that's partly just due to the nature of reading and writing and what that is for people as they're digesting it and how they make their decisions. But I wish we had something to quantify what's going on in people's heads as they digest the content.
Yeah, I would second that. It is a tricky business, isn't it? And we've discussed this before, because there's so much you want to achieve with content marketing, like even to sort of the brand awareness piece being an important one, but notoriously a tough thing to track. And I know that a lot of, we're probably diving right into it now, but it's interesting. But, a lot of companies, in my opinion, sometimes get too bogged down in sort of attribution modeling and going, where exactly did that lead and sale come from? But the reality is the customer journey is more complex, and there's the dark funnel, and there's things happening outside of the digital space that aren't trackable. And so it's a tough one. But yeah, if we could have, like you said, some kind of chip in the heads of our target prospect.
Not exactly where I was going with it, but yes, maybe that's the answer.
You asked me, I'm the genie, right? So that's what I took from it. So that's what I'll work together with Elon Musk. Yeah, Elon Musk will get chips in the heads of our target prospects, and we'll neuromarketing, right? We'll be able to understand exactly what's going on.
That's perfect. This is a classic case of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, that's probably where we're heading. That's a scary thing, like somewhere. It'll be good for marketers, at least, less so for those being marketed to, perhaps. Thanks for that. And yeah, an unlimited budget would also be nice, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't everybody? That's it.
Yeah.
A wash one. Everybody's got that same hope and dream, I think.
It wouldn't be too shabby for us as an agency as well if there was unlimited budget being thrown our way. So let's dive into the sort of core questions. I think that one thing I wanted to talk to you about, which I find really interesting, it's got a place in my heart, is what we like to call AFFU, the after funnel stage of content marketing and marketing in general. By that I mean basically customer comms. And a lot of companies, I think, focus their content marketing almost solely around building brand awareness and then lead acquisition, and then it kind of stops there. Whereas I know with AECOM, you're kind of shifting some of your focus towards that AFFU stage. So I'd love to know, what that entails, what you guys are working on, and what you've achieved and what you've achieved and or what you hope it will achieve for AECOM.
Definitely. So this focus sort of came about, I'm trying to think now, I think it was about 3 years ago, we did a brand refresh, and our tagline, which is delivering a better world, came in, and that was to really bring in our sustainable legacies work, which is all about our ESG work. And we wanted to bring that to the forefront of our brand, which was really successful. And there was a big focus there on brand awareness. And there's always some focus on lead generation. But I think for us at this point, we're in a unique place because while we're always looking for new clients, so that lead generation piece, we have a lot of the clients that we want. We work with a lot of the clients that we would be searching for, especially because a lot of our clients are government. And so while there are new clients that come on the scene or clients that work with competitors that we would love to work with, we do have a good body of those people. So we've sort of realized that we want to focus a little bit more on their experience and look at cross-selling and upselling and have those clients feel like they're getting a really premium is probably not the right word, but sort of a really nice experience and a really thoughtful, personalized experience. So for marketing to the customers that we already have, we're trying to help them tackle their problems specifically instead of the broad range of issues. So a lot of our clients will have similar challenges to others in their industries, but nonetheless, they're specific as with every organization. Every organization has its specific challenges that are unique to its own unique brand of fun. So actually putting effort into solving their specific challenge or helping them with a specific challenge beyond the work that they've contracted us to do. Help cross-sell. It helps us to show them some of our other capabilities. It helps to build up our relationship, and we want to be seen as a trusted infrastructure advisor. So as we move into that space, we're doing it, but we want to do more of it. We want to build it into our actual marketing process, into our client relationship process. So it's more than just sort of the ad hoc people. Our clients come to us because they trust us, and they come to us and will call and ask their client account manager or their point of contact for advice about something. And that's great. So how can we actually turn that into content marketing and have it be more developed and more of a part of our process instead of just as needed, to really sort of move us also into that advisory space.
It's really interesting because I suppose in a lot of organizations, it almost wouldn't be seen as the marketer's job to focus on this area. And that's where I think it's often almost broken in a way. And by that, I mean, you may be like the end goal is not the right goal. I say this, and I've said this many a time, if we're focused on leads, you might be getting the wrong type of leads in. You might be bringing in leads that aren't converting, or when they do convert, they don't spend as much money with you. But if you're focused on revenue, right, if our end goal is growing revenue, which is really what it should be, then naturally one of the key metrics in growing revenue is customer lifetime value, right? And so hence there should very much be involvement from the marketing team in nurturing actual customers, and like you said, cross-selling, upselling, giving them the best experience. So with that being said, I'd love to know, you mentioned account managers, right? So again, often in a company, it's their job, right? Marketing is just to bring in leads. There we go, and that's all we think about. But naturally, if you're crossing over into that AFFU stage, there needs to be some kind of at least conversations between AMs and marketing. And how does it work with AECOM in terms of like silos or non-silos, or who's talking to who, and that kind of feedback loop?
Yeah. So this is a really good point. And this sort of ties into a lot of what I would be talking about today, because things are definitely as they are because we are starting to adapt more to the situation that we have specifically, which is unique in many ways. And so it might not apply to everybody, but we had originally been working in, traditional sort of focus. And we're starting to see that, for example, our client account managers, a huge percentage of our clients have a dedicated client account manager. Those people have other jobs. So they're technical experts. They're not solely a relationship manager. So they're really busy. They're really good at what they do, and they're able to provide really technical insights and lend their expertise to their clients because they are actually working in the field. They don't have the time or the resources to create a bunch of collateral or to create a presentation or to be thinking, they're thinking about a project that they're working on with them. They may or may not have the space to think about some other part of the business. They may or may not know some of the services that are offered in a far stretch of our business because we do have such a diverse global business. So, or they may not have thought about the applicability of something that's happening in one of the far stretches of their business to their client. So having us be able to pull all the pieces together, all of our different services and offerings, working with all of the marketing leads for those different business lines and market sectors, pulling that together, and then presenting to our client account manager, here, this is our integrated global offer. This is what would help your client. And here's why us having people around the world and us having people in all of these different disciplines and markets is helpful to your specific client. So we do that work for them so that they can then take that to then go have those conversations. So that's part of the involvement, but it's also the piece where it's twofold because we have limited resources, but are, as you said, looking at revenue, in many cases, it's a single percentage, like say 5% of our clients are bringing in 80% of our revenue in any given region. It varies by region, but it's usually a single digit to, high 80s of the amount of revenues. All of our clients are really important and we want to nurture all of them, but with limited budget, how can we make the best use of that? How can we focus on those big clients that are our hugest revenue drivers and help those client account managers really be equipped with what they need to cross-sell and upsell and nurture the relationship?
Yeah, I suppose by focusing on those core clients, the ones that are sort of driving most of the revenue, and really understanding their needs, and you said it's quite specific to each client, which is great because obviously you can create really, really tailored marketing comms and content for them. But I suppose at the same time, you can learn more about, the types of clients that you want to bring more of in terms of, if these are the exact clients that really the money makers for us, the revenue drivers, and these are their core pain points, and you see some similarities across there. And first of all, I suppose you're creating marketing comms and content for them that I suppose can then be repurposed to be pushed out as sort of lead acquisition content at the same time, and probably pack a more powerful punch because you've learnt from the client. Would you say that's something that you do and is something that you're, was I accurate in that description?
That was spot on. And going back to that theme, which I'll probably come back to again and again, is doing more with less, working with a lean budget. How can we make the most out of this content? So if we figure out this really big client, we figure out their specific pain point, undoubtedly there are other clients in their industry that we can also apply this knowledge or these learnings to, whether we take it out and generalize it a bit more, or whether we anonymize it, or whether we just pull one piece of whatever we created for our specific client out, and then we can atomize the content, use it for other purposes. If, for example, we wanted to have and also doing thought leadership in different forms. So we started out really, thought leadership was an 800-word article, full stop. So in this evolution of that not needing to be the case at all, having a client come in and do a webinar or do a panel talk, pulling thought leadership from that, and then generalizing that or using that to share with other clients in that sector, or per the sort of ethos of our organization, finding somewhere that might be of interest in a totally different sector and pulling those pieces together. It's a lot of, because we do a lot of things and we can be all things to all people, we have to think about how to really focus in specific areas and then make the most of that to reach the rest of the all things to all people piece.
So even though you asked for unlimited budget, in a sense, having a limited budget has sort of made you guys really focus on the high value activities, and that sort of leaner team and leaner budget is almost a blessing in a way.
Well, that's actually true, I think. And we're at the relative beginning of this journey, because before we weren't actually looking at it that way. We were trying to support everybody. And I think it's like, as with anything in life, you try to do all things and you can't do all things well. So, and you can't necessarily just help the person who's the loudest. You have to really think strategically about what's going to help the business, what's going to bring in revenue, what's going to drive growth. And that having a limited budget has helped us, because we can say, this is all we have. These are the people we have. Here's what we can support. And here are your options if it doesn't fall into this bucket, which is great. It's not necessarily easy. And like I said, we're still in the beginning of that. And it's a culture change piece too, but got to make the most with what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd asked, I'm sorry, I didn't address the piece about the client listening, the client intel. That is one big piece of what we're doing, is trying to tie together the client experience. And this was never intended to be part of content. Actually, this is just a new marriage that we've created here. We have had client listening as part of our client experience program, as several organizations do, and it's been growing and growing and growing in the years since I've been here. And I got to participate in one of them with one of our clients, and we realized that it was an amazing opportunity from a content perspective. It's not at all meant to be marketing. It's meant to be about, how can we improve the relationship? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing well? Do you think you're getting good value for what you do? You know, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's meant to be they're not talking with somebody in their relationship with AECOM. They're talking with somebody who's in a different section of the business, which is how I ended up on one of the client listening programs. But from that, I found this entire treasure trove of client pain points, of clients actually asking, I want to be involved in that. Like, would you ever consider, inviting us for a panel or event? We really want to do that, which was pretty amazing. And then I had these topics that are broadly applicable to that sector, which is a big sector, but also I knew the specificities that could make it really tailored to that specific client. So we've learned from that those insights, not only do they help to build the relationship, but they can help to build the content that fuels the relationship, that fuels growth.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And again, it's something we always sort of push for, is, what we'd call buyer interviews. If we're working with a client, when it comes to writing really powerful copy for them, or building a content strategy that actually works, the starting point, ideally, if it's possible, is to talk to their customers, and run buyer interviews, sometimes surveys if you want to cast a wider net. But it sounds like you've got this kind of system in place for getting that client feedback, and you just, like you said, a treasure trove of pain points, desires, barriers, things like that you can then create content to directly address for them specifically, those particular clients, and also for new prospects that sort of sit in the same boat as them.
Yeah.
So it's great what you're doing. Do you find that how open are they to this sort of collaboration, these sessions? What does it exactly look like, and how did you approach them? And are they generally quite willing because they see the value in it?
So we have a client experience team that leads this, and they work with client account managers as well as our leadership in the business to identify, with the resources that we have, okay, how many client listening sessions can we set up? What are the clients that are top priority this year? Do we have, looking ahead in the pipeline, is there a big opportunity with them? Is there a renewal? When is a good time to do this? And we try to do it, I think it's every 2 to 3 years, I believe. So we have a whole team that sort of sets that up, and most of the clients are really, really keen to do it. They're really happy to take the time to do it. Some people, I think, we found too, once we get through a couple interviews with a particular client, the word sort of spreads as to what it is, because people will join the call and be like, I had no idea what this was or what to expect. And they end it with like, that was really lovely. Like, really enjoyed the conversation. Because it's a more relaxed conversation. It's not with people they work with. And we really push them to be honest. And we give them the opportunity to say, if you want anything to be off the record, it could be off the record. And we honor that. And then we take that feedback and we don't attribute it to them. We don't then go to the client account manager and say, look at this person said this. We aggregate it with all of the different comments that we get from that entire, batch of people that we interview at that client, and come up with a report and recommendations. We feed those recommendations back to the client, and then they say, yes, that looks good, or it doesn't. And then we go about working with the people that work, the client-facing team, go about starting to tick through the list of what they can improve, what they can change. easy fixes and then maybe bigger ones, whether it's getting different people in there, different technical experts to support anything you can imagine, really.
And then I guess, as we've been discussing, you could create content for them as well off the back of it, things to sort of educate and inform and provide value. And I remember when we talked before, you coined a term that I thought was very interesting. I believe you coined it. I'm attributing it to you. Yeah, thought leadership as a service. You want to kind of talk a bit about what you mean exactly when we say thought leadership as a service?
Yeah, it was I think it was at a moment where it was like everything was as a service. In our software as a service, of course, but then it was feeling like mobility as a service. And it was there was a lot of that floating around in the infrastructure space, especially in our world. And so the more that I was thinking about it was how we position ourselves within the organization. And then that sort of evolved as I participated in that client listening session and realized that if we want to be seen more concretely as an advisory firm, if we want clients do come to us, like I said, already to ask for advice. If we want that to be more of a part of our identity, if we want to move that way, even, over the next decade, then we need to start providing insights. And that's part of what an advisory firm does. And at present, we're not doing that in the same way that an advisory firm would. So if we can treat thought leadership as a service in this phase, as we're looking to position that way long term, then we're looking at these key clients. We're, in a way, commoditizing, but we're not gonna charge for it at this point. We're giving away our insights for free to our valued clients, and it's part of the service. It's part of the service that we provide. So they may have hired us for design or build or architecture, engineering. This is as part of that. This is part of the service we provide. So it's sort of like a 5-step process of working with the client account manager or taking part in a client listening session to get these insights, identifying the pain points, working with them to try to figure out the best method to get that to them. So some clients are going to be really happy to do a panel or participate in a podcast. And some clients are going to be like, I want one slide. Give me one slide. Others are going to say, I just want an in-person meeting. And that can be thought leadership too. And sort of getting that across in the organization. This thought leadership as a service can be you showing up and talking through something, slide or no slide, but you're sharing those insights. So whatever format works best for that client, and then executing on it. And then the final stages, as you already so wisely pointed out, is then either generalizing or taking bits and pieces and atomizing the content and making the most out of it for other clients that it might be relevant for. Which is a shift because before it was like, we want to talk about this. We think this is really interesting, or we're hearing this is interesting. And then we just would write something and send it to the world, everybody, whether it was relevant to them or not. And it was so general.
That's the most common approach from my experience. That's it. Potentially getting some insights, and to be honest, often not insight-driven content, just assumption-driven marketing is prolific, right? Like, I think I know what's going to work. Here we go. Let me throw some budget into that. Even though usually we're a sample of 1 or 10 or a small marketing team, and we're usually also not our target audience. So we're not the best people to be coming up with these ideas, really, as much as we may have brilliant creative ideas. Is there ever any kind of cross-pollination between, I suppose you said panels, so I'm assuming that there might be a few clients in a panel. Is there any like peer-to-peer knowledge sharing or anything like that? Because I know that community is quite a big, growing communities is quite a valuable thing, and that's been happening a lot more recently when it comes to that AFFU stage. Do you do any of that at AECOM?
Yeah, and that is actually something that we're looking for FY25. That's a goal to increase that. So we'll have a panel, and we'll have 2 or 3 clients that will come, and that will give them the opportunity to riff off of each other as they're talking, and the thought leadership sort of comes during their conversation in many instances, not always. If nothing else, they're discussing common pain points or sharing what they do, similar to this, sharing what they do in hopes that maybe there's something that the other person can take or can build off of. So that's really good. But our clients do also ask for that. They come to us with questions, and they say, you have all of these clients around the world that do this. What are they doing? And so that's a huge value add that we can provide to them. And as part of the thought leadership, as a service model, it's whether it's pulling those experts into that same room from around the world, or it's, somebody going and reaching out to each of them and pulling together our global expertise, because we have it. We definitely do. We're all around the world. We have these brilliant people that are everywhere. But if you don't actually manually go and pull them together, it doesn't actually provide a lot of value. But in some instances where the business is really well organized in pulling together the global offer, and in some instances it's a little bit more regionalized. In some cases, that's actually appropriate to what said business. But it's really helpful for us to be able to offer that service of pulling those insights in from other clients that have had similar challenges, whether we're and checking with them, obviously, whether it needs to be generalized or anonymized, and it's just sort of a theory, or here, this is what somebody else has done, or they're happy to connect on it. And I think doing a bit more of that, trying to get the happy to connect on it piece have to happen more frequently is definitely a goal going forward.
Yeah, and ideal, like I said, building that community, sort of peer to peer. They're probably in the same boat, right? They're a particular persona, and then you're kind of nurturing them without even having to do too much. Obviously you are, but like you're just facilitating it in a sense. And then again, just keeping those conversations live, nurturing the clients, and rather than just sort of selling them a service or a product.
I find it's sort of, I always try to think about what I appreciate when I get served content, or if somebody makes a connection for me without necessarily respecting or expecting anything in return. I find that a very valuable marketing tool, because I do feel, I feel a bit allegiant. I feel that they're investing a bit, because it's that give a little to get a little. And so if you're willing to help them build community, we may or may not get something out of that, but it sort of builds that allegiance and loyalty, which is nice.
Yeah. Secretly, we do want to get something out of it, though, right? Secretly, but they don't know.
At some point,
further down the line,
measure that.
We'll jump in with a hard sale. Now that you've been in this community for 12 months, you must buy this.
Exactly. Time to pay.
I think, exactly. Actively for all that value. It's about being selfless, really, isn't it? Like selfless value. I think that's what content marketing in general is, or should be, at least. I know, like, some companies, I think, get the wrong end of the stick there and just try and go in for the kill. But the reality is, it's about offering selfless value, and by doing so, building trust, educating, and building yourself as a thought leader, an expert, and an authority, so that when they are in buying mode, because most prospects out there are not ready to buy, when they are in buying mode, it's kind of a no-brainer for them to kind of choose you, because you're the thoughtful, selfless advisor. So I guess it works the same, at the top of the funnel, and equally kind of in the after funnel stage as well, even though they are already paying you for whatever you're offering them, giving this extra value add, thought leadership as a service, is only going to make the relationship stronger and better, and reduce retention and increase the chances of upselling and cross-selling and things like that. Yeah. Can I ask, we talked about it before in terms of like the relationship between marketing and, let's say, account management, and the fact that you have to have conversations and look at particular accounts and look at where they're at with the service offering, and what gaps there are and things like that. How do you sort of facilitate that relationship? Is it different kind of account by account, or is there like a monthly meeting with marketing and heads of different departments or something? How does it work from a logistics perspective?
There is not yet, although there is a monthly meeting of the client account managers that is meant to be sort of, marketing and different parts of the business are able to share whatever. So there's one just, I think yesterday, that was about our water business. And so one of the client account managers and lead marketer gave a presentation to all of our client account managers, so they know what's going on in that piece of the business, which is really valuable for them to take. But outside of marketing, it could just be they've had groups present on an innovation or a technology or what have you that could be really useful tools for them to take and have their client conversations with them for their client conversations, I should say. So that does exist. At this point, it's still individual. So some client account managers are really, really keen on this and they really see the value of marketing and they're excited about it and they're available, and others are really busy. And there's varying degrees of how much of their time is spent on the client account management piece versus the rest of their job. So there's all kinds of reasons, and there's geographic reasons. These client account managers are located all over the world. So at this point, it is sort of, we're looking at high value clients to start. Clients that are, produce a large amount of revenue for us. And that's kind of where we have been piloting. But going forward, again, that's the FY25 goal, is to really help to put a framework around this and institutionalize this more so that there is more of a connection that is between the client account managers and the marketers, and sort of building up that relationship in a more concrete way. So I think that's tremendous. And that's not something that we've been strong in the past. It has been siloed, and our organization is really well integrated and really connected in a lot of ways, and still siloed, as all organizations are in different ways.
Yeah, and I suppose, I think the larger you get as an organization, the more siloed you tend to get for kind of obvious reasons. And AECOM, a huge global company, it doesn't surprise me. I think, one of my, you sort of semi-answered that, but my next question was going to be, is there, or has there been resistance from account managers or salespeople or things like that? Or is it because I know that sometimes in some companies, like, there's different perceptions around marketing and the value of marketing. So I suppose when you move to that next phase, I imagine there might be a bit of change management or even internal comms that will help to push this and drive this forward, because some salespeople, for example, or account managers, you said you've got kind of technical account managers, it will be quite foreign to them, the idea of thought leadership and the idea of thought leadership as a service and all these kind of things that can really create value. So do you predict having to sort of create some internal comms campaign to get people on board?
I haven't met with any pushback yet. I mean, no outright pushback, at least that I'm aware of. I think well, two things is, one is a lot of times people are just so happy to have marketing support because we are so lean that if we're like, we're going to give you tailored marketing support, they're like, okay, but it does require, they're thrilled, but it does require their involvement, which is the trick. We can't just go off and produce something. We really need all of their insights and we need them to work with us. So it has to be somebody that has the time to dedicate to it. But the thing that will help us, I think, and there is a huge change management process around this as well, is this, this client service standard that we have, and it's all part of it. So it's ensuring that we are giving our absolute best to our clients, that we're bringing the best of our technical experts to our clients. It's a holistic piece about how, we're listening to them and we're there for them. Institutionalizing that, again, this is something that we've always done, but it's really bringing that to the forefront of how we operate as a business. And this is part of that. So it's bringing, this is when we're bringing the best of AECOM to our clients. This is part of it. We're bringing in our expertise along with it. So this is part of the package of treatment that you get for being an AECOM client, which is going to be elevated as we go forward. So I think we have that benefit, that we're not just sort of moving in thought leadership as a service on its own. And then we also have the benefit of being able to point to the long-term strategic objectives of the organization and say, this is where we're going. So we need to start walking the walk and acting the way that we want to be seen. And it's going to take time to build that up. So let's get started now. And that works for most people. Everybody wants their clients to have great service. I think it really comes down to time and resource, is how much people are willing to, but I don't think anybody is necessarily opposed to it otherwise.
Yeah, that's great. So it kind of, it feels like, or it sounds like it quite neatly falls under a core value and your vision, so vision and value, so of AECOM. So, okay. I think I've got time for one more question, final question. Looking forward to the future, do you have any sort of predictions or thoughts about the evolution of thought leadership in the marketing world? Anything at all? It might be related to AI, or I don't know if we have time to dive into AI, but that's a whole separate episode.
Yeah.
But any thoughts about kind of where things are going with content marketing, perhaps in this sort of after funnel stage?
Yeah, that is really where my mind goes immediately and that's sort of what I've been wondering. It'll be interesting to watch as everything evolves, because it's sort of this pull in my head where I'm like, well, we're still going to have to get the insights out of the experts' heads somehow, but eventually, will we get to a point where the difference between what's produced by AI and what's produced by the experts in its original form is incrementally different? And then at that point, what sort of value does thought leadership hold? I mean, it's our definition is it has to be original thought, to the best of our knowledge. It has to be novel, and so that should give us a longer life than a lot of content. If it does require that first original thought, maybe it pushes thought leadership to be grounded that way. So it's going to maybe need to always be grounded in research and original thought. Whereas now, sometimes, as you kind of alluded to before, sometimes there's some stuff thrown in there into thought leadership that's not necessarily original.
Yeah.
So maybe this will push us out.
I'd argue that the majority of it is like that, right? Fairly generic, and especially from an SEO perspective, SEO has been such a huge part of lead acquisition for most companies. And, there's this traditional kind of SEO content, quite generic, just answering search queries. But again, as people start to use generative AI for search as well as for creating content, I think it's becoming, at least we argue, more and more important to create novel, like opinions and actual thought leadership, meaning, you've got a stance on something, you've got a perspective, if it's driven by research and insights and particular cases, particular use case, a particular case study of work you've done with a client that's sort of repurposed into something valuable and pushed out there. That can't be created by ChatGPT because it comes from you. So it's like, and ChatGPT levels the playing field as well, because if everyone can just press a button and create all of this average content, okay, great, everyone can do that. So how do you, much like always in marketing, how do you differentiate? How do you kind of put your head and shoulders above the rest of your competitors and gain share of voice, market share, and things like that?
Yeah. Well, now I was watching a panel actually about a month ago where one of the editorial leads from a big firm was saying they had invested so much in SEO and they'd seen a drop, and so that was her question, was sort of, if I could see into the future, I would want to know how this all plays out in that sense, because we're sort of in this interesting phase where we're like, we haven't invested a ton. We're sort of on the cusp of making that more of an investment and a focus, and now we're wondering what the right way to go with that is. But maybe in the long story short, though, is maybe my answer is that it forces thought leadership, forces us to raise the bar, which would be amazing and glorious.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think you guys are actually in a really good position because of what you're. This focus around, everything we've talked about in this episode, customer comms and being very tailored and specific to their pain points. I think personally that will be ideal content, when we're in this world of like generic AI, average sort of regurgitated stuff that's out there, and saturation. So I think that by repurposing everything you're doing, you'll be in a good position, even from an SEO perspective. But again, like, there's so much to talk about on that particular subject. I've got lots of thoughts, but it's almost time. I want to just end with another little silly bit, which we like to call cliche you, cliche me. As well, I've talked about cliched average content and copy. It happens a lot in the B2B world. So I'd love to know, what are your 3 most disliked copywriting cliches from your industry?
They may be across industries, but anything that uses innovative technologies, that makes me want to cringe. Everything is innovative. That's in front of everything. How so? Tell me, what do you mean innovative? People just plug it in front of every single thing. I think another one, the word thought leadership itself, like after that conversation, that's also one of my biggest. I kind of cringe when I hear people say thought leadership. I'm like, do you mean what you say? Is that used correctly? And then there's a whole bucket, I think, for my third one, there's a whole bucket of like ones that are sort of ironic in the infrastructure, design, build, engineering space, like tools of the trade, groundbreaking, sort of like we're digging deep and to get these insights, and they're just sort of like a little bit cringy when they're lined up next to something about a tunnel, for example, and we're like, we're digging deep and just yeah. So those ones are a little cringy for me. Do you have a favorite that tops your list?
Well, look, innovative. I agree with you there. Innovation. I was speaking to someone, a prospect at the moment. Actually, I won't name any names, but they were talking about how they had previously decided, the previous marketing people who are no longer there had decided to just put smart everywhere, smart technology. So, you know, even like literally the kind of headline, supposedly instant clarity header on their homepage was something technology but smarter. You know, it's like, what does that mean? Or what actually, if you think about it, what's it giving you? Where's the clarity? What do you mean but smarter? And it's kind of the same with innovative, like how so exactly? It's these words that perhaps at some point were quite nice, maybe nice copy, they get so overused that they lose all meaning and they become cliched, and it's a crime. It's a crime, that's what it is. Especially, and it's so common in the B2B world, you know, and something that we often come up against, sadly, as a copywriting agency, is pushback when we're trying to like make the voice and the messaging and the wording a little bit more creative, a little bit more human, more conversational, because we know that's best practice. Sadly, sometimes we get other stakeholders get involved and go, hang on, no, I want this. They're not copywriters, they don't know the art and science of it, and they just go, but these are the words used in our industry, so we must use them because that's what people want to see and read. The reality is they don't, because they're meaningless often, and the people that you're trying to talk to are human. So yeah, it's a bit of a bugbear for us that we unfortunately, sadly, like the great creative copy we write sometimes will get diluted because the client's always right. But it's a constant fight. It's a constant fight. And education is important, again, to try and educate people around why we want to remove these cliches and why they are cliches and why we want to sort of inject more human conversational language into their copy.
Yeah, I agree. That's the objective of our content as well. And it's a struggle. And I think it comes down to two people feeling as if writing is something everyone can do. And when we work in an organization with all of these technical experts that have really diverse technical skills, I wouldn't dream of thinking that I knew how to do what they do better. But writing is sort of like an equalizer. People think that everyone can do it because everyone does do it to some degree. I don't design buildings to some degree. I don't do it at all. So it's fair, but it is, it's a craft. It's a trade. And there's a level of expertise involved that definitely doesn't always get seen. But you're right. It's a dance, and it is an education piece. And that's a huge piece of our job, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But thanks for asking me. I don't usually get asked this. It's usually me asking the question. So appreciate that. And thanks again for this. It's been really, really interesting. Again, I love talking about AFFU, partly because we've coined the term AFFU, so I want to say it a lot. But just because there's a reason why we coined it, because, you know, it's such an important part of the customer journey that is often overlooked when it comes to marketers. So it's really an area that I wanted to dive into with this podcast. Thanks for allowing us to do so in the first season.
Yeah. When we make it mainstream with the term AFFU, we'll remember that it was you guys.
There you go. And thought leadership as a service, that was you. Right?
You heard it here.
Both of those will become mainstream. Yeah, exactly. You heard it here today. Thanks again for joining, Melissa. It's been lots of fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
My pleasure.